One of the most interesting trips to Egypt that one can enjoy is being on a Nile cruise. Moving around Upper Egypt in a floating boat is a dream for many people, due to the amazing ancient historical sites that one can see during the tour. But did you ever try just to stand still on board, thinking of the Nile? Whoever is interested to learn more information about ancient sites must be curious to know more about ancient Egyptians as well. This Nile used to be the main source of life. It all started here, by the Nile. Everything depended on the river in ancient times, as it still does today, to a large extent. It is quite simply Egypt's lifeblood. Even with all the modern progress attributed to today, Egypt's settlement pattern mirrors closely that of older times, in as far as viable habitation is, and was only possible within the Nile's floodplain. A narrow strip of land limited to several miles each side of the river. The best way to really see this is of course from the air, or even from the Tower of Egypt, where you can see the fertile area adjacent to the river in stark contrast to the vast expanses of desert stretching away for an eternity. Habitation was only possible within the Nile floodplain, where all agrarian activity took place, and where much depended on the river's behavior and the regularity of its inundation. The land accounted for a small percentage of the vast expanse of Egypt's area, and it was here that the vast majority of the people were to be found. Apart from some isolated oases in desert regions, everything was concentrated along Egypt's main artery of the Nile. The annual flood or inundation usually started in mid-June and lasted until mid-October, and planting would begin when the water receded, and crops would be ready for harvesting from February to June, when the river was at its lowest. However, things did not always run to plan with such precision. Sometimes the floods were low, which could lead to shortages, or sometimes high, which could cause destruction to villages and settlements along the river. The floods could be early or late, thus affecting the yearly cycle. And the greatest disruption occurred when certain patterns persisted for successive years. Egyptians expected disruption from time to time and could survive this to a large extent, but continuous years of either low or high floods spelled disaster. In recent times, the building of the Aswan Dam is Egypt's latest effort to control this mighty life force, but in older times, it was very much a case of being prepared as possible for all eventualities. Down through the years, Egyptians have made great efforts to monitor the levels of the river at various times throughout its year, and also throughout its cycle. In fact, this became a necessity and turned somewhat into an exact science as far as this was possible. There was a gauge for measuring the flood levels at Rouda, a place near Cairo, which recorded information for more recent times. It shows that the periods of drought took place with great regularity between 930 to 1070 and 1350. The gift of the Nile enabled the Egyptians to cultivate wheat, beans, lentils, and more. According to legends and earlier texts, it was the god Osiris who showed people how to get the best from the Nile by the art of cultivation. There were many varieties of fish in the river, and cattle, sheep, and goats were plentiful also. Geese and birds of all types populated the delta regions. And there are many examples of rural life and common activities to be seen in Egyptian art, and these images help us greatly in our understanding of this great civilization. The river, of course, was also the main means of transport between places in ancient times. The river flowing south to north